We are live.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody who is watching. Thank you, everybody who took the time to put this meeting together with all these different people and all these different areas involved. And thank you to the 5 candidates who are here tonight for interviews for the vacant board seat. I know some of you were aware that there were 6. Somebody did decide that they wanted to rescind, so there are now 5 candidates that we'll be speaking with tonight for the board vacancy left by Melissa Reamer. The way that we have anticipated this going is that we will we'll do interviews alphabetically, and we have a list of questions that the same questions will be asked every candidate. What I propose to the board is, in the interest of time, is I'll ask the lead question, and then based on what your answers are and what information you discuss, every board member can have an opportunity to ask a follow-up. And if there's no follow-ups for that particular question, then we'll move on to the next one. We have it's a total of 7 questions. They're not, they're not brain busters. They're just a way for us to learn about you, and they help us make our decisions. So what I'm going to do, just so everybody here is aware, I'm just going to read off the 5 candidates so that the public is aware, and so that everybody is aware of who's here. So alphabetically, we have Marlo Dickman, we have Darrell Frazier, Jennifer Hodge, David Perry, and Thomas Quinn. So before we start, are there any questions? Any board members have any questions about the rules of engagement, or are we good? We're good to start?
Good to go. I'm good.
Okay. Well,
Matt, I just have one quick thing. Are they gonna be interviewed separately, or are they all gonna be on one at a time?
Well, to be perfectly honest, in my mind, it was one at a time. If there's benefit to doing it a different way, we could do that.
No, I think it's better if we do it one candidate at a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree.
I do it one at a time, Matt.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Dickman, welcome.
Yes.
Obviously, we've received your resume, we've received cover letter and all the information. So I will start with the first question.
Matt?
Yes.
Everybody's still online.
Excuse me?
Everyone is still online.
So they're going to be hearing everything that's being said.
Right. Well, it's a public hearing, so.
No, the
candidates are going to hear the questions that we're asking Marlo and have time to formulate them. Well, he has to answer.
Okay, well, then we can either email the questions to everybody, or we'll have to ask individual questions to everybody and then move to the next question.
It is a public meeting, so even if it was in person, they would have a right to be there during the other candidates.
Yeah, I think Lee, the point from the other board members is Ms. Dickman's going to have X amount of time to formulate responses. Whereas
you could rotate the order of the questions. Like
now you're just making
Dickman will go first, and
now you're making my life difficult.
I know, but it sounds like the fairest way to do it.
I mean, to her though too.
It's not fair to Ms. Dickman to go first on every question. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Seriously, there's 7 questions, 5 candidates. So.
All right.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
It's a good thing we only have 5 people, because we've already wasted so much time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start. We're going to start with question 1. This is for Mrs. Dickman, and then I'll rotate and weave around so it's fair for everybody.
Great.
Okay. So, Mrs. Dickman, again, we've received everybody's information. So just please tell us a little bit about your connection to the Suffern community and to the Suffern Central School District.
Yes. So, well, first of all, thank you to the board for hearing us all tonight, and to Lisa Weber and Heather Campbell and Lisa Castaldo. My name is Marla Dickman, and I have lived in Rockland County for 15 years now and resided in Montebello for 9 years, which I know still makes me a relative newcomer to this community. But we've enjoyed our time here very much. I have 2 school-age children. My son attends 4th grade within the district, and my daughter had attended elementary school within the district and has now attending middle school out of district. I am also practicing attorney, although I'm not practicing at the moment while my children are in school. I'm applying to the board because I believe that serving your community is very important, particularly when it comes to the future of our children and our schools, because the excellence of a school district can really affect the quality of life in the community. I'm also involved with the Reach Foundation, and I have appeared before the board twice in that capacity. We fund innovative educational programs specifically for the Suffern Central School District, and because I'm on the grant committee, I'm in part of the group that approves those grants, and then we present to the board what projects and what programs are being presented to the students this year. We also do scholarships for graduating seniors. So I'm interested in serving on the school board because it's a really good way to be involved in decisions that affect our community in very significant ways.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know there's a follow-up from Chris. No, you raised your hand.
I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
And I thought you were being so innovative by using like the
I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dickman. Are there any follow-ups from board members? No. Okay. Okay. So in the interest of fairness, Mr. Frazier.
Hi.
Question goes to you.
All right. I am a 14-year resident of Sloatsburg, where I own a home here in Sloatsburg. I do not have any children, therefore I have no children in the Suffern Central School District. I do have a vested interest as a homeowner in the district. I have been involved. I'm not certain if you know or not, or the public may remember, I ran for the school board in 2017, in which I was unsuccessful at that time, but my heart is still in the community. I feel a lot like Ms. Dickman. Being a part of the community, I always like to give back in each and every community I've lived in. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, where I was a former police officer for my full career, where I volunteered vastly with the school district, with after-school programs of such. I feel that Suffern Central School District has a lot to offer. It's a very viable school district, and I like to be a part of making the decisions to keep the district moving forward.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier? Mrs. Hodge, question is to you. If anybody needs me to repeat, then please just ask.
Okay, thanks. Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I appreciate everybody's time and investment. So relative to my connection to the district and to the community, I'm invested. I'm a lifelong Suffern resident. I'm a product of the Suffern Central School District, not only academically, but among multiple extracurriculars throughout my time as a student. I moved away only for 4 short years, came back I have an 11th grader at Suffern High School right now, and I have a 7th grader at Suffern Middle School, and I'm invested. I'm invested in the students, I'm invested in the families, and I'm invested in the community. I have a 4-year-old next door neighbor, and I want her to have incentive. I want that family to have incentive to stay here in the district, and I want to give them reasons to do that. And if I can be part of the solutions to any problems or part of the support to any of the benefits that we have within our district, I want the opportunity to do that. And I believe that my connection to the community and the families and the friends that I have in the district would be a pretty significant reason why you might consider bringing me on. As far as those connections go, I have multiple personal connections with teachers within the district, district employees, and then even beyond with Boy Scouts of America. I'm a parishioner and a catechist at Sacred Heart School. I've been a member of the PTA and an active member of the PTA ever since my daughter was in kindergarten. So I believe that my connections are strong, and I have an investment in maintaining what I believe to be really excellent district and opportunity for our children to learn and be successful.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Ms. Hodge? Okay. Mr. Perry.
Yes, good evening. I've been living in Suffern now for 19 years. I grew up, from 10 minutes away in Tuxedo. So my whole life is in the area. I have 2 children in the school currently, one in 9th grade in high school and one in 6th grade in middle school. And I'm also a teacher currently in New York City. I have a prior career in finance years back. So with the knowledge and understanding of teaching, being as in the teaching side, the student side with children, the financial side, coming from finance, and also living here, I have a vested interest in what the district needs and what the district could use and what would help benefit it in different assets in different ways. I have a great devotion to the Suffern School District because as a teacher, I've done my many research in the past years. The district itself, how amazing it is compared to other districts in the nation. I'd be part of any way to help improve it more than it already is. Be part of the advancement of the district and of Suffern itself. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I actually have a follow-up. I just was curious. You teach in the city.
Yes.
What do you teach?
I teach special education math to 6th grade. And I joined the special education, if I may just say, because, as I said, I was in finance initially in New York Stock Exchange many moons ago. And I left because I felt incomplete because I'm a person who had a disability. I was in a car accident when I was 16 and caused a traumatic brain injury. And so it changed my life, literally. I went from being an A student prior to having to relearn 1 + 1. And so with that, I felt I had to not understanding, but a camaraderie maybe with students with disabilities. I know we're all different, but I just know how it can be tough. And I use that currently in my school to help with the other teachers and principals and other administration members to find different ways or avenues to help students succeed with or without disabilities.
Great, thank you. Any other follow-up questions for Mr. Perry? Okay, Mr. Quinn.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll start by saying that I am a Suffern High School graduate. I've lived in this district most of my life outside of graduate school and undergraduate. first in Airmont and then in Suffern and now in Montebello. And professionally, I'm a high school math teacher. I've been a teacher for 16 years, currently at North Rockland High School. And I have three of my own kids in three different Suffern schools, a 10th grader at Suffern High School. I have an 8th grader at Suffern Middle School, and I have a 5th grader at Montebello Elementary School. And the reasons why I want to be considered for the school board has to do with the fact that I find myself drawn to public service. And there's nothing, in my opinion, more personal or impactful than the local school board. And I say that coming from the place in my various respective roles as a stakeholder. First and foremost, as a parent, I want my own kids to have access and opportunities that I was afforded when I was a student at Suffern, and I know that it's grown so much since then. As an educator, as a teacher, I am a staunch advocate for public education. I've built a career pushing for public education and all that entails. I've had the opportunity to work in different school districts, including New York City and some other local districts, where I've witnessed the impact of a lack of access to opportunities and lack of nutrition and parental involvement and poverty. And I think that I can bring a unique insight and bring a unique wisdom to the school board, especially in the midst of our most urgent educational and health crisis that we've really been exposed to ever. And I say that from somebody who's in a classroom every day, coping and helping students and families cope. And then thirdly, my role as a tax-paying homeowner, I understand the responsibility to the taxpayer, whether you have students, whether that individual has students in public school or not. And in addition to our school system preparing our children for the future, having a strong school system also pays dividends in many other ways, whether you have students in school or kids in school or public school or not, considering the impact it has on the local housing market, the impact it has on the local economy. So there's really no way to divorce your school district from everything else that takes place in your community. And I want to participate in supporting that in all of the ways that it's supported me and my family.
Okay, great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, I would ask him the same question you asked Mr. Perry, Matt. Where and what do you teach?
I teach high school mathematics at North Rockland High School.
Any other follow-ups? Okay, all right.
Just one question for Fraser. What are the activities that you're involved in? Didn't you just become a trustee in Sloatsburg?
I'm sorry, that was for me, Mr. Karen?
What are your activities? Were you just elected to the Sloatsburg as a trustee?
That is correct, yes. Yes. And were you asking other voluntary activities or just that in particular?
No, I have those on your sheet.
Oh, okay, yes, yes.
Don't worry, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because there is another question that's more related to those extracurriculars.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on, and for this one, I guess we'll go backwards. We'll start with Mr. Quinn. So this question really, this question is, I would say, very directed at 4 of the candidates, although one of you it would still be somewhat applicable. But 4 of you have never run for the board before, and 1 of you ran 3 years ago. So the question that we're going to ask is, why do you feel that this is the right time for you to join the Board of Education?
I'll start since we're working backwards. I've I've thought about running for board in years past, and I just never was able to commit to it, just because I didn't have the time when my kids were younger, because of all the activities I was always carting them to. Now that they're older and more independent, I find myself more able to participate and more able to commit. And
Okay, that's a fair answer. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn?
Told me that they thought I would be good at it, and I'd heard that in the past, and I took it under a much more serious consideration than I ever did in the past. And I also
I think he's freezing up, man.
Yeah, definitely freezing up.
Can you hear us? Are you still there?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me? I think I lost you for a second.
You froze up a little bit.
Oh, okay. I was just adding that I think that I am in a unique position to bring a perspective to the school board that allows for wisdom about what's happening on the ground right now inside of a classroom, with families that are actually being impacted by this crisis, with students that are being impacted. So I just thought it was the right time, whereas in the past I wasn't really fully ready to commit.
Okay. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn? Okay. Mr. Perry?
Yes. I feel now, wanting to do it now as opposed to years past. In the past, I'll say I wasn't ready because I didn't have the full understanding of this experience as a teacher. Not to have a full understanding now, but a better understanding of the Suffern School District from years of experience of having my children there, and also just living in Suffern around neighbors who are teachers, and understanding what students need more now than in the past. Again, as I said before, for the special education side, I see more what would benefit students in my school, at least, what would benefit students and things that could help improve their understanding in school. My financial and accounting background, and just I'm ready with a better understanding of the school, the background of the school, I should say, student needs, and so on, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Perry?
Yeah, Matt, I just wanted to ask Mr. Perry, you said that you're now more better equipped to do this, yet you didn't have much of an understanding before. How long have you been a teacher now, and why has that made you more qualified?
I've been a teacher since 2009, and just years of understanding, of schools. I've been in different schools, not just in the school I'm in currently. I've worked in other schools in the past as well. And so I see the different aspects from different areas. Some are in the Bronx, some up here in Rockland County. So I see the different facets, different parents, different skills of students, different understandings, different backgrounds. And with that, I feel I'm more prepared now to better understand the needs of students currently in the Suffern School District, with the variety of backgrounds we have within the students currently.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other follow-ups? Mrs. Hodge?
So thank you so much for this question, because I've thought about it, I guess, for years, right? Which kind of leads back to being a really important question. So I think back, I want to say it was back in 2012, my role in PTA at Viola was Board of Ed rep. So it was my responsibility to attend the Board of Ed meetings and then bring the information back to PTA and advise and let everybody know what's going on. So I had an opportunity to make a decent relationship with the board members at that time. So during that time, there was an opening on the board, and Craig Long reached out to me and asked that I be his running mate. So this goes back kind of a while for me. And I invested a lot of time over those couple of weeks in learning about what was involved in being on the Board of Ed, and primarily how much of my personal time it would take to really make an appropriate contribution to the board. And at that time, I had an elementary age child. And I guess at that point, my son was probably in early intervention. My career was like in turmoil. My mom was ill, and I just ended up deciding that it really wasn't the right time for me. I did, however, recruit my friend who went for it and was able to serve for a little bit. So that made me feel sort of better about it. So since then, you know, of course, my kids have grown. My career is on a very good path right now. My mom's not ill anymore. So those are all factors that lead me up to this opportunity. But moreover, what I've realized in the past couple of weeks, since I got a text from a very good friend of mine asking me to do this, is I've now had an opportunity to experience every level, right? So my son was in early intervention. Both kids are through with elementary. My daughter's done with middle school. My son's there now, and now I've had experience in high school. So I think it's really helpful that I've had an experience not only as a student and a graduate myself, but like kind of in the current climate in each and every grade level. So it's just really appropriate time for me. So thank you for that question.
Okay, great, thank you. Any follow-ups for Ms. Hodge? Okay. Mr. Frazier.
Yes, thank you. This is a great
your answer is going to be a little bit different. But, you know,
yes.
It's been several years since you ran.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm kind of like Ms. Hodge in the fact that I've been tapped on my shoulder then and now to apply myself. I have no restrictions. As I stated, I have no children. I have nothing to hold me down. There's never, ever a bad time I feel in my life to volunteer to make a difference. I will always make myself available to volunteer. I have a cousin who's on the school board in South Carolina. It's a paid position, and they run for it, and they get paid. When I'm asked to volunteer, I make myself available, and I feel like I can make a difference. I'm very flexible. I have no restrictions. Although I work a full-time job, I am very flexible, and I'm the first to raise my hand to help in any way I can. So I feel like I would be a great asset to help with the different aspects of this community and the Suffern Central School District.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier? Okay. Mrs. Dickman, it's been a while since we've heard your voice.
Yes. My situation is not unlike some of the other candidates. My oldest child is now just started middle school, and it was in the previous years, I have thought about being on the school board at some future time, but there were a couple things going on, which was I was already volunteering for the Reach Foundation, which was a substantial time commitment. And my husband was working many hours outside the home. So I was kind of the sole caretaker, and I could only devote so much time to meetings and outside work. And as the time has gone on, I've added more, like I've joined the PTA and become more active in that than I was. And now, really, the pandemic has changed our life quite substantially. My husband now works many hours inside the home instead of outside the home. My children are a little older, and they are able to supervise themselves for longer periods of time. And it seemed like now was as good a time as any, since there was an opening to go forward and pursue this. And public service is important to me. I worked for many years as a civil servant, and it's very important. It's very familiar to me, and so that's why I'm here now.
Okay, great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next question. And here, let's start with Mrs. Hodge. Excluding the COVID-19 pandemic, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the Suffern Central School District in the next year?
I think a lot of people are leaving, and I think a lot of people are kind of throwing in the towel and giving up hope in the community, and it makes me sad. So I think our challenge, this is why I mentioned my 4-year-old neighbor earlier, I think our challenge right now is to, and look what happened today, right, at the high school where there were so many kids that showed up to get that test because our kids are so anxious to get back into our schools is such a clear sign that we're doing so many things right. And I think our challenge is to drive that message home and convey that message to our existing students and the younger kids in the community that there's a reason to stay here. And I don't think there's a question that that's our primary challenge right now.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions on this for Mrs. Hodge? So, I mean, I just want to, for me, just to clarify, I mean, it sounds as if, you know, what you're really saying is, you know, the primary issue is essentially declining enrollment.
I don't, when I say people want to leave, I don't primarily mean the schools. I actually think quite the contrary. I think the schools and the district are a primary reason that people are staying. And I think it's like the core of what's keeping people here. And I think it's our golden ticket to keep people here. So it's not necessarily the school where I feel that people have concerns. I think that's the driving force in our favor. But the challenge is that people are leaving the community.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Frazier.
Okay, I feel to follow up on Ms. Hodges' point, if that happens, the mass exodus or a slight decline in enrollment, I think a big challenge would be for the district is trying to keep all of our schools open. Closing a school, any school in my eyes, is not the way to go. I think we need to keep all of our schools open in each and every area that we have schools right now. So we would have to be creative and working to keep the enrollment where it is in our schools, keeping each and every school open, not closing any schools. The second challenge I would see, it's probably in the background of everyone's mind. We currently do not have a superintendent of schools, albeit Ms. Weber is doing a great job as the acting superintendent of schools. I think in the near future, we may be faced with the challenge in the district of hiring a new superintendent. I think that's very important. Right now, it could become a challenge, whereas I'm not certain and I don't have any information to lead to this, but we're probably most likely still paying Dr. Adams. That's a strain on the district. And so I think we need to really get moving in hiring the most qualified person, be it a male or female, to fill the role as superintendent to lead this wonderful district.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier? Mrs. Dickman?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to second what Mr. Frazier said, that Lisa Weber is doing a fantastic job. and but the district should be finding a permanent superintendent. I think something that is it was already existing in this district, that there's a fair amount of inequality. There's a large wealth disparity, and I think that's just been exacerbated by the pandemic. So this is not really about the pandemic, but it's about addressing the inequality that exists in the schools, where we're maybe not serving the most vulnerable and students as best we could, and really finding out what their needs are and how best to support them is something that I think can only improve our district. But unless you're really serving the least supported student, are you really the best school district? You really need to be there for everybody. And so that is what I think needs to be further addressed and looked at more closely by this board.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Mr. Quinn?
Yes, I know that we're not supposed to be commenting on the pandemic, but I do want to mention that I think there will be some ancillary issues that the district is going to have to face related to the devastation that a lot of our families are dealing with economically, in addition to students dealing with mental health conditions and problems related to post-traumatic stress. And I think schools have always done a great job of addressing those issues, and they're really going to have to respond in a big way moving forward, and not just this year, but for years to come. To talk more about specifically our district outside of the world of COVID, I witnessed at several board meetings 2 years ago the schism that was created by not having a permanent superintendent, and just to echo what one or two of the other candidates had mentioned, I think that is an issue in the minds of a lot of our community. I also think enrollment is an issue. Young families moving into the area, a potential issue, especially we see at Cherry Lane, enrollment has dropped over the last several years. I work in a district that has had to restructure and close schools down, and I've seen the devastating effect that can have on those neighborhoods in which those schools lie. And I would just be fearful of anything like that, a big move like that taking place in our district.
Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, I have a question, Matt. You mentioned that an ancillary issue would be mental health of the students. What would you do to improve that, Mr. Quinn?
Well, I'm certainly not a psychologist or a social worker, but I would encourage the school to hire additional mental health support staff to identify and meet with students, and even make house calls if necessary.
Thank you.
Any other follow-ups? Mr. Perry?
Yes, I feel the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges for the district, would be the advancements in education, such as technology, especially recently with the pandemic, all the remote learning and the technology resources needed, and greater understanding by the teachers, administration, parents, and students of different software and resources need to be used to assist students' understanding of different concepts. With that, in line with that, with special education students as well, with all the, I would say, increased understanding of different disabilities over the past 20, 30 years, every year we learn more and there's more assistance needed for students who just need to better understand how to properly assist schools in providing those resources to students in the future.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Perry? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question here. Mr. Perry, I think we'll start with you.
Okay.
in regards to the annual budget, what would be your approach to the formulation of the district's annual budget?
Well, one first thing I would do is look back to see in the past year or even past years, I'll say, they needed resource or needed funding for different aspects of things. How were they used? How were they divided up? How were they quantified? And with that, if things were needed more in years going forward, try and see what areas were used less, what aspects of the budget in different avenues were used less to properly, without spending more, be able to make things spending the same or increase a small amount if possible, but to make it so that without making it harder on the district and yet still increase any needed spendings in places that's required.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up questions for Mr. Perry. Okay. Mr. Quinn.
Yes, well, I would begin that process with the current budget and look at where we were at for the previous year, where we need to potentially cut funding. And I don't mean by creating a general budget cut, but I mean, if there is attrition that frees up funding that needs to be dedicated to something else, then that allows you to balance that sort of thing. One of the big issues that has arisen in the last 10 years or so is the 2% tax cap, where you can't increase the levy by more than 2%, and in reality, it's even less than that because it has to do with the consumer price index, which is generally less than 2%, the inflation rate. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration. But I've also, again, I don't mean to keep referencing my where I work at North Rockland. I know we're here to talk about Suffern, but I've witnessed over the last 13 years that they have had this tremendous task of balancing a budget in a situation where they are tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, actually, to the Morant power plant that successfully sued them to get back a tax assessment over several decades. And the way that they've had to sort of work magic to allow a responsible and responsive budget. So I kind of have been following that over the last several years, and I know that they always begin, and that most districts begin with, where are we now? What do we have to maintain? Where does spending need to go for the following year? And does that have to do with programming? Does it have to do with staff? And again, there's always that big feature of attrition where some of our most experienced staff members are retiring, and that usually frees up funding to replace those individuals with new staff members and new programming.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn? Okay. Mrs. Dickman.
Yes, I think that this year was very different from last year when the last budget was formed. And I think we need to look at the school and the learning as it exists and how it's likely to exist for the next few months or maybe several months, and see what resources are being used and what resources really aren't. Where does money need to go and where is it really not being used as far as formulating the new budget? I know there was a concern at when the last budget was voted on about raising taxes during this time when so many families are struggling. And I think that should be avoided at all costs. But another question would be to look next year at what's happening with the economy. Are people overall doing better? And second, what's happening with the Department of Education? Because the new president has said that he wants to use more educational funds and spread them out further so that schools get more benefit than they have previously. So I think we need to also look and see what other sources of funding may be available.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Thank you. Mr. Frazier?
Having gone after Mr. Quinn, Mr. Perry, and Ms. Dickman, I kind of echo what they're saying. I think the approach would be to look at the current budget, see where we can build upon or either cut from. We also have to keep in mind, as was stated, the retirement of the teachers. We always want to look to retain and hire the most qualified teachers. With that comes salaries. And in order to remain performing at a high level as we are, we have to look to really pay the teachers what they're worth to keep our district moving forward, educating the children. And where we can cut, definitely cut, just not go across the board and say we'll leave everything the same or we'll raise. We need to look to see where we can move money from different areas if it's being underutilized and put it into area that is needed.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier? Okay. Mrs. Hodge.
So yeah, the first thing I would do would be to ask a ton of questions, like, call in the troops and learn about where the district is spending money now. I'd make a spreadsheet because I live for a spreadsheet, right? So anytime I've ever had to work with a budget in my life, in my personal life, when I was 5th grade committee chair for both my kids at Viola, that was the first thing I did, right? And I kind of made a prediction where I wasn't exactly sure how much something would cost. I put in a number when I was sure, and I prioritized, right? So which were necessities, which were really nice to haves, and which were kind of ancillaries, and I delete rows and insert rows and move rows around. I hate waste in so many ways. So I would try, like I said, with the learning and calling in the troops and talking to a bunch of people, where the money we're spending is most appropriate, where we might be able to make some changes and make some moves. But primarily it would be consultative. I would rely on the experts. I would rely on you all, members of the board, our administrators, and anybody who had been involved in the spending in previous years to really make some appropriate determinations. Not to trivialize it by comparing it to 5th grade committee in my, 12-row spreadsheet, but in my experience that worked, so.
Okay, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions for Mrs. Hodge? Okay, then we'll move to the next overall question. Mr. Frazier, we will start with you this time. Can you tell us about your involvement in any volunteer organizations or, outside clubs?
Yes. As Mr. Cairns asked earlier, I was on the ballot to become a village trustee in Sloatsburg. I was elected to serve a 4-year term starting in December up until 2024. In the past, I was a mentor when I lived in Westchester County. I mentored was a mentor at the Children's Village in Dobbs Ferry. It's a foster home for youth. I served as a mentor to those children. I also, when I was in Charleston County, I was a board member on the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Board for Charleston County. I was also tapped to become the chairman for fundraising for the Charles Webb Center for Children with Disabilities. I led that year with the highest monies raised to to that center for their use of funds, for equipment and things of that nature. I've also worked as a volunteer to deliver meals on wheels to seniors in our community where I lived. I was also a volunteer as a village trustee on the Sloatsburg Library Board for 6 years. I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals in Sloatsburg. I've also worked in the city, the Bowery Mission, feeding the homeless and needy families that are in need of food through the mission in the city. When it comes to volunteering, I can go on and on and on, but I don't want to take up too much more time. But as I stated, I love volunteering, and when I can do so, I raise my hand.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Are there any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Dickman.
Well, my volunteer experience in this county has really been connected to the schools. The longest period I volunteered now is almost 5 years on the Reach Foundation, where I have served on several committees. The grant committee, I've been a co-chair of that for the past 3 years. I've also served on the scholarship committee, and I've also volunteered at the very popular STEAM Expo, which is held at Suffern High School every year. And then beyond that, I've participated in PTA activities, although I've never been an officer at the PTA. I think the Reach Foundation really has brought me so much information about what's going on in the schools and where teachers are really doing amazing things with innovative programming. And it's something that I intend to continue with.
Great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Okay. Mr. Quinn.
Well, in my younger years, I was involved with Meals on Wheels and the Ramapo Valley Ambulance Youth Corps. In more recent years, I've been involved with organizing the family directory for the Montebello Elementary School PTA. But outside of that, I haven't had an opportunity with the busy schedule I've had with my kids. And I do look forward to taking advantage of more volunteer opportunities in the future.
I'm sorry, just you said the Ramapo Valley Ambulance Corps?
In the Youth Corps, yes.
The Youth Corps, okay. Okay, thank you. Follow-up questions for Mr. Quinn.
I just wanted to ask, the Ramapo Valley, when did you say that you did that? The Youth Corps, was that when you were a kid, or is it recent?
This was in my teenage years.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Perry. Oh, I think you're...
I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Currently, I do tutoring for my students after school, and in between classes, when I have the opportunity to tutor students individually in math, and also do work in science and ELA with them as well. Going back in years past, when my students were younger, I coached for the Ramapo Valley Soccer Club when my students were younger. And also, being that I was, when I was in college, I used what was once called Vested, which is now Access VR, to provide assistance with me with my disability. I have given a speech to an annual luncheon or breakfast, brunch, I'll call it, with Access VR, a speech to the other people within the organization for a couple of years.
Great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Perry? Okay, Mrs. Hodge.
Okay, so primarily with PTA, so I think previously I mentioned I'm a catechist for Sacred Heart, which stinks this year because it's virtual. So I haven't had the opportunity to meet any of my students yet. Hopefully, I will at some point, but we're kind of communicating via email right now, so it's been okay. And I'm also on the committee for my son's Boy Scouts troop. So I get involved with planning events, etc. So with PTA, I've held several executive board positions. I was PTA council delegate. I was a vice president of fundraising vice president of fundraising a few years, and VP of PTA 1 year. I ran nominating committee 3 years, so that's at the end of the year where we recruit and try and fill in the positions for the upcoming year. I was Board of Ed rep, as I had mentioned earlier. I was 5th grade committee chair for both of my kids. I chaired the talent show 3 years, maybe 4 years, I think. And I think that about does it for PTA other than ad hoc volunteering here and there. Now with my current role, I work for Oasis, a paychecks company, which is a PEO, as an HR generalist. So right now I volunteer on our diversity and inclusion committee, and I'm a champion for our migration committee. That's a relatively new technology endeavor within my my employment right now.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Fudge? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so our next question. Okay, we'll start with Mrs. Dickman. Can you tell us maybe one personal attribute that you possess that would be the most important if you became a member of the Board of Ed?
I think listening and communicating that you are listening to the person who's speaking. Very often, and certainly when people appear before the board, they want to be heard. And they want to know that they are being listened to. Not every problem has a solution that's apparent, or that we can, as the board, do. But a lot of times people just need to know that what they are saying is being considered by the board. And I think during my life, what I've learned is that even if you don't have an answer for someone, or you don't have an answer right away, they do want to know that you've heard them. And sometimes that is just what you can say for the time being, and everyone is happy with that because they know that you're listening, they know that you're thinking about it. They're not just speaking into the ether, that you are paying attention to what they have to say, whether or not you can solve their problem or not.
All right, great, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Okay. Mr. Perry.
Yes, my personal attribute to contribute be my patience and my understanding and knowledge of student and parent needs. And along with that, as I said before, my knowledge of finance and accounting, be able to bring that to the Board of Education to help with funding purposes. And student needs to be able to bring the understanding of personal experience and student experience, which I see currently every day in school.
Thank you. Follow-up questions for Mr. Perry. Okay. Mr. Frazier.
I would consider my biggest attribute is I am a listener. I listen and I also advocate. In my current role in my full-time job, I'm an advocate for customers on the high-end side of the luxury automobile industry that I work for in the Northeast and Southern region. So I advocate on the behalf of those who needs to be advocated for. And as Ms. Dickman said, when someone is speaking, you always need to listen. If you don't listen, you may miss something. And in order for someone to be heard and for you to understand what that person is speaking of, you need to listen. We have a full district of people that are speaking to us, and we need to listen, and we need to respect everyone's views and opinions. We may not agree, we need to respect where they're coming from. And I have that ability to respect, listen, and then advocate.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Excuse me, from Mr. Fraser. Okay. Mrs. Hodge.
I'm very frank and genuine. You're never going to wonder what I'm thinking or what I think about something, I should say.
Okay. Very direct answer. Okay.
I had the benefit of going later in the...
Yeah. Well, you won't have the benefit on the next question. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Hodge? Mr. Quinn.
The attribute that I figure is worth mentioning here would be my ability to work as a team. In my professional life, I was chosen to represent the North Rockland Teachers Association on our negotiating team a couple of years ago. A few years before that, I was selected to be on the New York City Teacher Leadership Program team. So I think I have a history of being able to build relationships with the team. And I think the team in this equation is really twofold. One, being a member of the team that represents the community at large, and the smaller team, which is being able to work with the 6 other members on the school board.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Quinn? All right. So we're at the last question, and this is going to be more of a this is a Mr. Shapiro classic coming up, and I'm just going to go in order of how you're all on my screen for this one. So all my little boxes on my screen, I'm just going to go in order. That'll be the order for the last question. So we're going to...
Doesn't that change if they talk though?
No, because I have mine mine is all tiled. So I can see everybody at the same time. So we're going to start with Mrs. Hodge. And maybe I should let Mr. Shapiro ask this one.
Thank you, Matt. By the way, before this is an easy question, really. There were no right or wrong answers for this, but there were no right or wrong answers for any of the others. Just wanted to know how you thought, and this has been very enlightening for me. So thank you very much to all 5 young people, and I'm allowed to say the word young because you were definitely younger than I am. But this question is, we received papers from you, and whether it was a resume or just a little activities or CV, whatever. But tell us something about yourself that is not on that paper. Like, we want to know who you are. So Matt, you can do the order. And obviously, okay. I think Mrs. Hodges first on your side.
Okay, I'm a worker bee. One of my clients called me that a few months ago, and she actually was referring to herself as well. She said something like, Jen, you and I are worker bees. So you give me a task and chances are I'm going to be able to dive right in and get to work. So like I said before, whether it starts with learning, right? So it could be something I have no experience with or I don't know anything about. I'll start in with the questions and the learning, but chances are I'm going to get right to it and I'm going to put my best effort in and work as hard as I can until I get it figured out and worked out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mrs. Hodge?
I have a follow-up comment, if I may. It sounds like this is probably my last opportunity to speak. I just want to say, well, thank you all, like I did at the beginning, for the opportunity, and just to convey how nice it is to know that there's a team here on this call, that everybody's invested, right, in this district, and everybody seems to really want the best. And it's so nice to see it. I appreciate being a part of this so much. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Quinn.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for your question, Mr. Shapiro. You were actually the acting principal at Montebello a handful of years ago when my son was there. I'm sure we had met at some point that year.
Yes.
I think if you asked anybody who knows me well enough, they would tell you that I am open to new ideas. They would tell you that I have a lifelong love of learning. And I don't say that as a teacher. I don't say that as somebody that's on the spot answering a question for the school board, but I say that just as a person. And I like learning anything. And I am interested in learning the ropes about everything that goes into being on the school board and everything that goes into running a successful district. And I look forward to an opportunity where I can continue to learn and grow.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And do you and Mrs. Hodge was right. This sort of is the last. This is the last question. So, I guess I'd also give you an opportunity and everybody an opportunity to maybe, if you have anything that you just wanted to add.
It is very encouraging to see all of these people that are so invested in the education of our youth and the health of our school district. So I want to recognize and acknowledge that as well. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you'll consider me.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Dickman.
I think that I'm a person who picks her battles. And if anything, being the sole caretaker for 2 young children all day long, all the time, has taught me more that you really have to pace yourself. You look at what's important, what's most important, what to prioritize, what needs to be done, and you work it from there. And it's best to just be kind and sort of have an even temperament. There's really never any need to yell and to upset people. Things go better if people can be civil to each other, and just take in what people are saying before you react. In my previous employment, I was privy to people from all walks of life and all kinds of different types of employment. And I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with that, as I'd never had that before. And I realized that I really liked it. And that was just the best part of my day, was meeting and talking with different people, working with other attorneys and in courtrooms, and coming to resolutions. And I miss having that in my life, but there's always opportunities out there to pursue that again.
Great, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions for Mrs. Dickman? Okay, and then again, Mrs. Dickman, if you had anything that you just wanted to add before we closed, the floor is yours.
Hi, Mr. Shapiro. You were also the acting principal at Montebello when my children was there. It was always nice seeing your friendly face when I was in the building. So thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody's trying to butter you up.
Yeah, you must be the swing vote, Shapiro.
No, yeah. I am not the swing vote. No. Trust me.
Okay, Mr. Perry.
Well, something about myself. First off, I'm very much a team player. I like working with other people. I like the camaraderie, which I have right now with my fellow math teachers in my school. We were together every morning for a half hour discussing the day, what's going to come. With that, in Suffern, I want to give back. I've been living here for 19 years, as I said, and I just love it here so much. It's such a great place. It's such a great neighborhood. I want to give back. And with that, I'm the type of person who's very loyal to the town, the district, the people, my children, friends, family, and so on and so forth. And I see the glass half full. with that. I'm always the type of person who wants things. I look for the best in things. I never start with the worst. Always look for the best. How can things get better? And way to advance things. With my loyalty, I'm always finding myself in a good voice for students, for parents, for the village of Suffern, and hopefully for the district itself as well. And with that, I'd love to be part of the board as a person who, like the rest of you who have done such an amazing job so far, to advance it even further. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Perry? And Mr. Perry, again, I mean, if there's anything else that you just wanted to add, this is, by all means, your opportunity.
I just thank you so much for the time, the opportunity to meet with you all, and can't wait to see what happens in the future in the Suffern School District.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Frazier, last but not least.
Yes. I would consider myself a team player. There is, as you've all heard, there's no I in team. We all work together as a team. This board I see as a team. We work together for the betterment of the school district and the communities that we serve. I'm also a giver. I don't like to hear of anyone in need of anything. I'm always there to give financially. I'm there to give moral support. I consider myself a cheerleader. When someone is down, I like to lift people up. You all probably receive these mailers in the mail from all these different organizations wanting money. I rip these things open and I run to my checkbook and I give. It could be a bad thing, it could be a good thing. I'm not certain of that, but I don't have any children of my own, and I like to give back to people that are in need. If I hear of things, that's just something I was raised to do. My mother always instilled in us, and you've probably heard it before, do not look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. I like to uplift people. We have to think positive. We're all in this world, in this district together. Challenging times come. We have to be understanding, and we have to all work together to get through any crisis that we're in. And that's what strong community leaders and volunteers do. They work together for the betterment of their community. And with that being said, people from outside of the areas will see what we do in this district, and they would want to be a part of this district. I'm also, I don't know if I should say it, I'm a collector. I like collecting things, cars, watches, glasses, just everything. So not a hoarder, but a collector. And then when I see an opportunity where I can start giving those things away, I do so. I would like to thank all of you for your time. I'd like to thank all the other candidates here that have put their names in to volunteer. That's the main thing here. We're volunteering, and I certainly wish all the best for each one of us. If I'm not the candidate that is chosen, as you've seen in the past, I ran. I still support the other candidates that are running. And if I'm not chosen to be fortunate enough to work with you, I'm here to support in any way I can in this district. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Frazier?
Not a question, but Darrell, it's great to see you again.
Yes, great to see you as well, Paul.
Okay. That concludes the questions. And I'm just going to say, and then, I mean, I'll give everybody an opportunity, but I just want to say thank you to all five of you for putting your hat in the ring and, looking to get involved. And I know this is not the easiest situation for any of us to be in. I don't think it's an easy situation trying to fill a vacant seat at all, let alone during a pandemic when we're all looking at each other on a screen. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for, rolling up your sleeves and doing what is not easy. I'm sure this was not easy, to be on the other end of the screen here, getting asked these questions, and it's not the same as being in public, and I completely understand that, and I commend you for that. Does any board members have any comments they want to make just in general before we close this session?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to each and every one of you for your interest in becoming a member of the Board of Education. It's not an easy job, and it won't be an easy job to pick from you. All of you really carried yourselves very well and put your best foot forward. So it's going to be a difficult decision, but I just wanted to say thank you for being interested in serving and caring about our community, because some of you I know, some of you I'm just meeting, but to see as many people come out and try to fill this spot really makes me feel good about what we've done over the last few years. So thank you to all of you, and I really appreciate you coming out and trying to serve.
Thank you. Any other board comments before we close?
Yeah, I'd just like to say at this time to thank all five of you. Tremendous. It's going to be, like Angus said, very difficult to make a decision tonight. Mm-hmm. I just want to say personally that I would be comfortable working along the side of any one of you. So I say that wholeheartedly. You guys knocked it out of the park. This is a terrible position that I'm in now, trying to make a decision. You guys did a great job. Thank you. And thank you for your interest in the district. I really appreciate it. We're in good hands with people out there in the community that really care. That shows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, Matt, I just want to commend all the candidates as well, and just say thank you for volunteering. And it's not an easy thing to put yourself out there and to volunteer for this job. It's funny listening to the answers to question 2. Why do you feel the time is right? Triggered a lot of what I was thinking when I decided to run a year and a half ago. So it kind of brought up a lot of those same thoughts and memories, and it was just nice to hear that there's a lot of people in the community that feel that same way. So I do commend everybody for putting their names out there. And like Tom, I would feel comfortable with anybody, any of the 5 of you. So like Tom, it's going to be a tough decision for me. But again, I just want to say thank you again for volunteering.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Perry.
Yeah, I basically echo what everyone has said, and I think it's really great that there were a number of candidates who put your name forward, and we need that extra person on the board. With you all bring certain qualities of experience to the board, and as everyone has said, it's going to be a difficult decision, but thank you very much for applying. We appreciate it.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out a way if we can replace my other 5 colleagues with the 5 of you.
Then you'd have to you'd still have a seat to fill.
Well, yes, but maybe then we'll draft one of you. But maybe we'll do like a American Ninja thing or something.
Just keep Nick Pond. He's the smart one.
Yeah.
No, really.
The rest of us get the boot.
No. I really want to thank all 5 of you. As was said by my colleagues, it's great to know that there are people out there, and I'm sure that there were more, but you took it upon yourself, and it's not easy to put yourself out there, especially on a screen. But thank you. Stay healthy and be safe, and in a few months or maybe half a year, we can all kind of look back and say, wow, we've made it through. And I hope that's going to be the case.
Okay. Well, again, thank you everybody for doing this and for looking to get involved and for going through, this exercise. This is not going to be an easy decision for us. But, ultimately we will have to make a decision, and we'll fill our vacant seat. And, I would say that in terms of a timeline, it would be sooner rather than later. So, when we meet as a board, while these interviews did have to be public, obviously the conversation about individuals will be private. And once we've made a determination on who we'd like to ask to fill that seat, we will reach back out to everybody, but I would not anticipate that taking very long. So, with that, again, thank you again. And, and that's gonna close the interviews for the board. And Heather, since we're already on and we're live, why don't we move and open we'll open the meeting.
Okay.
And then, we'll do executive from there.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So, at this time, and everybody can stay on, you can, for all the candidates, you can stay on, you can drop. This is still a public meeting, so you're free to, if you've got dinner on the stove, if you've got somewhere to run, a kid to pick up, I think we all understand that. So, you need to go finish out your night, however you see fit. But at this time, we will call to order the meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education, December 1st, 2020. Let the record reflect that all board members are present. The board will entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent for human resources, and school attorney, legal aspects of speech-related liability. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools and school attorney, details pertaining to the superintendent search, and reviewing candidates for the vacant Board of Education seat. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, second?
Second.
Mr. Cairns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. The board will now adjourn to executive session. We'll reconvene around 7:30 for the regular meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.